Hi, yes. Alright, very good. Thank you. Alright, looks like I can't see, can I see a total count of people that have, joined, or is it just this list? Okay. Do you want me to share my screen with the presentation, or are you guys loading them up? Okay, I'll do that. Alright. Sorry, everyone. Let me get into oh my gosh, I haven't used, PowerPoint, like regular PowerPoint in a while. Percent. I don't wanna do that. There we go. Okay. All right, here we go. Sorry, everyone, for a 12-minute delay. Technical issues, my fault. Not Tossin's, not workflow con. So, anyway, thank you very much for attending. Hey, what is our? Do we have a hard stop at 1:30? Okay, all right, we're just gonna plow through it then. Okay, my name is Brandon. I run Hall CPA. We are an IPA top 500 firm. I started my firm back in I went full time into it in 2016. I'd kind of started it as a side hustle prior to that, but 2016 was my official start date to launch my firm. I have scaled the firm. I think we grow, 50 or so percent per year. We'll do 12.2 million this year, and then we want to grow about 30% a year going forward. And that's all organic growth. We have not gotten into the M&A space, although it is something that we are interested in exploring. I've grown the firm to a large size pretty fast, and with that, I've made a lot of mistakes. I've tripped over myself more than once, and I've cost myself a lot of money and a lot of time as I've fumbled through learning how to run a business. One of the toughest challenges that you have to figure out as you grow is how to lead and inspire and motivate people. I would actually argue that is not related specifically to running a firm. This is true of any sort of job that you might have. If you want to grow in your job, one of the best ways to do that is to learn how to lead. It took me a long time to figure out how to lead, and again, I made many mistakes, learning from my mistakes. But that is the one thing that I feel like I'm very good at, which is self analyzing my strengths and weaknesses, objectively figuring out where I went wrong, and kind of setting my ego aside. But leadership if you listen to the Jason Daly, or now I think he renamed it to Jason on Firms. If you listen to that podcast, I was on with him, and I talked about it. I think leadership is actually the main issue that holds firms back from scaling beyond certain thresholds. Because and I know these are going to seem like large numbers, but you can scale a firm to one, two, $3 million just by doing more of the same that you've been doing, which is service clients, increase prices, hire more people to service more clients. But to really break through that 3, 4, $5 million kind of cap, you have to transition your skills out of client service and into what I call like platform management. You have to know how to manage the business, but you also really have to improve those leadership skills. And something that we've experienced as we've scaled past the 5, 6, $7 million mark is that leadership, just in general, is very difficult to scale because it takes a long time for people to go through the reps of making the mistakes that eventually make them a better leader. It takes a lot of coaching, it takes a lot of development, and it's the number one thing that will hold firms back from scaling. But if you can figure out leadership, then what it also means for you is you have a ton of leverage, right? If you can lead a team of 5, that's more leverage than doing it yourself. If you can lead a team of 10, that's more leverage than leading a team of 5, right? So if you can lead a team of 100, then you're going to make a lot of money if you can do that effectively. So inside of leadership is this leverage component, and I've talked about this somewhat frequently on my newsletter and just on social media. But as accountants, we just we fundamentally think that leverage means increasing our price, right? So we're going to increase our price for our clients, and then we're going to earn more money, and that's the one leverage component that we all gravitate towards. Pricing discussions are all over the internet. It's a big popular topic. But the other side of this is leadership. Leadership is leverage as well. You can have Walmart prices and you can run a Walmart CPA firm if you want to with Walmart prices. And if you have the systems and the leadership skills to get it done, then you have an insane amount of leverage, even though your pricing is bare bottoms, right? So I try to draw that distinction because the point that I'm trying to make is that if you can master these skills, then you will increase your leverage. And it doesn't matter if you're working for yourself or you're working for somebody else. The same rules apply. The more leverage that you have, the more money that you'll make because you're going to impact the firm at a much higher rate, a much higher value. All right, so let's jump into this. So today's agenda, the number one issue that firms face, kind of just talked about it. And sorry for my AI pictures, by the way. So you're going to see some AI pictures in here that, of course, don't spell anything correctly, but that is the current state of AI. But they're all coming for our jobs, so they say. Setting clear goals and expectations is we're going to hit that too. Accountability, holding effective one-on-ones, and then making data-driven decisions. So number one issue preventing firms from scaling is poor leadership. All of the issues that a firm faces stems from the people in charge. I think it really is that simple, right? So if you have pricing issues, if you have quality issues, if you have systems issues, technology issues, those are leadership issues as well because somebody is in charge and somebody has made bad decisions, right? So if you are running your firm and you are experiencing issues, the reality is that it's your fault. And that took me a long time to figure out. And once I figured that out, I was finally able to set my ego aside and or self assess objectively everything that was going on at the firm. Kind of take like a bird's eye view and give myself the critical feedback, review the game tape, and make decisions and make the firm better. But until you can get to that point, if you can't take ownership over all of the bad things that have happened downstream, then you are going to cap your ability to grow. That is a fact. So I have coached some firms from time to time, and it's always interesting when you come off of tax season because a lot of times firms will say my tax team's terrible. They don't get anything done. They didn't meet any of the deadlines. Yada yada yada. And the first thing I ask is, well, what expectations did you set with them? And they'll say something like, well, we wanted to get all the work done by the deadline. And I say, well, what deadline did you set? Well, 4/15 that's the deadline, right? Right. Okay. Did you get all the work done by the deadline? And then they go, well, yeah, we did. And I'm like, well, then why does your team stink? Because you set that expectation, right? So it sounds like to me that they actually delivered on your expectations. And that's when we kind of have the aha moment of, oh, wow, yeah, like I'm not actually that great at communicating expectations. I need to be more clear in what my expectations actually are. But again, it's a leadership issue. And something as simple as that and as silly as that happens all the time. We use subjective language all the time. Get this to me next week, early next week. What are you even talking? What does early next week mean? You have a different definition than I have as to what early next week mean. So you have to be really clear with your expectations, and you got to set really clear deadlines. You got to hold people accountable to it. But that is the number one issue that holds firms back from scaling is just simply not effectively leading teams, not effectively setting expectations and communicating. So what we did at our firm, once I started figuring this out, that I was just not being a good leader, I tried to put some systems in place to help me be a good leader. So here are a couple of my systems. So the first thing that we do is we set SMART goals. Now, I actually don't set. It's not like fully SMART goals. Or I guess maybe it is. But the key with SMART goals is to actually make them attainable. So the mistake that I always made was setting goals that were actually stretch goals. The one person would hit them, but 10 would not. Well, that's not achievable, attainable goal. So what we try to do now is set very objective, very attainable goals. And when I say objective, I mean like we write them down. There is a number, there's a KPI, a key performance indicator that we track against, and we have to hit that number, right? If we hit the number, you meet the goal. If we don't hit the number, even by a dollar, you don't hit the goal. And when you can get that clear and that objective, amazing things happen downstream. Now, if we get somebody that's like $1 off from 500K in revenue, are we going to ding them for it? No, of course, probably not. But if they're 20% off, we're going to say, look, like you're not even close to the goal, so this is a problem. We need to fix this problem. But when you set the SMART goals, when you write them down, when you send them to the other person, and when they reply back and say, I accept these goals, now you have a better expectation setting system. And the SMART goals are not just like performance goals that we set at the beginning of the year. They can be things that come up throughout the year, right? So every week you can be setting SMART goals, just really mini weekly goals from potentially daily stand-ups that you might be having with your team or one-on-ones. But the point is to make sure that everything that you do, you really have to work on your communication. I promise you that if you get more clear, we have a saying in our firm called clear is kind. If you get more clear with your communications, that's actually the kindest thing that you can do for somebody. Remember, I worked at EY and PwC back in the day before I launched this firm. And our managers, they were really good at the actual service. They were really good with the clients. They were great technically, but they weren't really clear in their communications. And it left me trying to guess what their expectations were, the timing of their expectations, what the prioritization was. And I would get it right most of the time, but not all the time. And then I would disappoint somebody. But that's not very kind, right? If they would have just told me straight up what they needed, when they needed it by, it at least gives me an opportunity to tell them that's not realistic. Or I have these 10 things on my plate. Which one of these 10 things would you like to bump so that I can do this thing for you? Right? Because I've got to create capacity for it. It at least gives me the opportunity to have that conversation. But if they're not being clear in their expectations, I don't even get a chance. So by not being clear, they're actually being unkind. And I think as accountants, as a populace of accountants, we generally do not like conflict, right? We want steadiness. We want the numbers. We like the numbers. We don't want to talk to people. But because we don't like conflict, we accidentally set ourselves up for failure later on simply because we're not clear with our expectations. Hey, I need this next week. Can you get it to me next week? Sure. But like for me, next week might be Friday. For you, next week might be Tuesday, right? So we just have to be super clear with each other to make sure we're on the same page. And all we're trying to do as leaders is create an opportunity for the direct report to tell us if that's achievable or not, right? And what I'm talking about are like these little projects, these little tweaks that we make every single week. I mean, yes, the performance goals at the beginning of the year, those should be extremely clear, but we have to practice every single week whenever we're working on minor projects, whenever we're working on deliverables, anything like that that we're kind of shifting around. You should be extremely clear in your communications, and I promise you, if you are, you will at least have more colorful conversations with your team, or you're going to see great performance. You're going to see a big bump in the performance simply because they know what the expectations are. So, smart goals written down and accepted every single time. Anytime that we're making a shift, we write it down, we slack it out, and we get the other person to confirm that they understand it. And that's after we have the meeting with them to hash out all the context. But really important practice that enables us to go back and say, well, wait, we agreed to this thing, so now we've got a problem because it didn't get done, right? That's what we're trying to do there. Set some accountability up. The other thing that I do is I hold comp conversations in advance. I hate surprises. I do not like being surprised, right? So I don't want to get to December and then hear about all the amazing things that somebody did. I want to set the main priorities at the beginning of the year. And I want to say, okay, if you are able to execute X, Y, and Z, your bonus will be A, B, and C, right? And then at the end of the year, did you get X, Y, and Z completed? You could do all the other little things, and I might throw you a discretionary bonus, but I'm not taking all that into account for the main issues. Goal X, goal Y, goal Z. Were those accomplished? If yes, you get bonus A, B, and C. I like to have that conversation in January with everybody on the team so that they know what to expect for total comp for the year. And we do that in a cycle now. We also track goals and have goal conversations. I think this year we did it on a quarterly basis, but next year we're going to move to monthly basis. We want to make it more frequent. And what we're trying to do is just create feedback loops so that everybody knows where they stand all the time and it's not a surprise. Again, I hate surprises. Not a surprise in December, and it's not just up to the whim of any one manager or leader to say, I don't like this person, so we're not going to give you a raise or a bonus. No, we should be able to point to data, point to actual performance, and point to where you track into your goals every single month. You should know where you stand every single month. If you can't give that to your people yet, find a way to do it, because the clarity, again, is kindness. You will retain people when you can do that. When you can give them a path to success and you can explain exactly what it looks like, you will retain people. Goals mean nothing without accountability. What gets measured gets done. So we can set the goals all we want to, right? But if we don't actually hold people accountable to the goals, then the goals are not going to get done. And whenever I talk about accountability, oftentimes, again, when we're talking with accountants, the typical accountant doesn't like conflict, and that's okay. It's just something that we have to learn to work through. The accountability conversation becomes icky, right? It's the, well, I don't want to micromanage. But there's a difference between accountability and micromanagement. Micromanagement is telling somebody how to get every little piece of their workday done. Accountability is giving them autonomy, but holding them accountable to the promises that they are making, right? So we want to make sure that when somebody makes a promise, when somebody makes a commitment, that we actually execute on that promise, on that commitment. Because if somebody says, I'm going to get the first review done for tax returns on this date, we're probably communicating that all the way to the client some way, somehow, right? So the idea is to make sure that you create a system for accountability. We do this with one on ones, we do this with team meetings, we also do this with daily stand ups. We don't do daily stand ups with everybody, but we have multiple meetings a week with each person on our team to just do a check-in status update. Some of our team has actually moved that to async communication, so like Loom videos and Slack messages instead of actually meeting on Zoom, which is really cool. But the point is that we're always checking in, going, here's where I'm at. Here's what I did yesterday. Here's what I'm doing today. Here are any blockers that are holding me back from getting the work done. Um. Okay. Cool. Okay. Holding effective one-on-ones. We meet on a weekly basis with our team, and we do a one-on-one. It's about 20-30 minutes. We have to first understand who the meeting is for. One-on-ones are not for you. One-on-ones are for your direct report to get coaching from you. So you're a support role here. I say that because I see people cancel their one-on-ones and it drives me nuts. Never cancel your one-on-one with your direct report. Again, it's not for you. You want to ask them for the agenda. So it's their meeting. They need to bring the agenda. Your job is to be curious, ask clarifying questions, explore habits that prevent or help their workflow, and then set actions and follow up with them. Again, a lot of the accountability kind of comes into play. 50% of the meeting is, or 50% of these meetings is accountability. The last thing that I want to touch base on is you just need to make data driven decisions. I can't, again, it drives me nuts with being surprised. So a lot of people just shoot off the hip. Inexperience does enable you to shoot off the hip pretty effectively, but as often as you can, try to make data driven decisions. So one thing that I always encourage people to ask is, how do you know that this is true? It's a great question to ask. Another thing that you can do is think about, how can you set up systems that create data for next year? My COO is very good at that. So we're thinking 12 months in advance and we're going, okay, what systems do we need to create today? Um, and I think I've got like 1 minute. So I'm going to power through this. Um, when talking about performance with anybody on your team, make sure that you point to actual examples, actual data. Don't just make it all up. Don't talk in generalizations. We want to be objective. And again, we want to be clear. And then get industry data as well. There's the IPA survey, there's the Rosenberg survey. You can benchmark to those and really understand how your firm is performing. So all in all, just stop shooting from the hip. Try to get some actual data, uh, data driven decisions. So that is it. Sorry that that was 18-minute presentation, but I hope that was helpful. I have a newsletter. You can check me out on LinkedIn, Brandon Hall CPA, and then there's a link for my newsletter to subscribe there. I'd love to have you there. I talk about these types of concepts every Saturday morning. I send that out. So thank you very much for attending. Appreciate your patience, and I hope that you have a good rest of your week. And I think that's it, unless there's some questions. Maybe. Thanks, thanks, thanks. Yeah. Okay. Cool. I would just join my newsletter. Yeah, that's like on my newsletter. I actually have a public site of all the prior newsletters too, so you can plow through that content if you want to. Yep. All right. Thank you guys. Have a good one.